An emergency appeal by the United Nations has brought in pledges of more than $1 billion in aid for Afghanistan. The UN says the money is needed to avert a humanitarian crisis in the country following the Taliban takeover. Millions of people are said to be on the verge of starvation. The pledges were paired with demands that the Taliban take steps to respect human rights. The UN says money would go to maintain medical services, water supply, and sanitation. Other projects in support of women and children's education will also receive funding. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says the money will be a critical lifeline for many Afghans.
The people of Afghanistan need a lifeline. After decades of war, suffering, and insecurity, they face perhaps their most perilous hour. Now is the time for the international community to stand with them. Today, 1 in 3 Afghans do not know where their next meal will come from. The poverty rate is spiraling, and basic public services are close to collapse.
Even before the Taliban returned to power, the country relied heavily on international support. But now life has become much worse, and many people lack food and sufficient medical care. We can speak now to Linda Tom. She's with the United Nations in Kabul. Linda, thank you for joining us. So tell us what the biggest challenges are at the moment.
Today in Afghanistan, we are on the brink of a humanitarian catastrophe. This is due to 40 years of conflict, recurrent natural disasters, and now we're experiencing the second drought in 4 years. That, combined with a looming economic crisis, has been a deadly combination for people in Afghanistan. Even before the last couple of months of turmoil, already at the beginning of the year, half the population, that's 18 million people, were in need of humanitarian assistance in Afghanistan.
It is a dire situation. We know that the United Nations has just secured $1 billion in aid pledges, but that's for a population of well over 30 million people who are facing, as you just said, an economic crisis, drought, many other factors. Can that money make a difference?
Of course, that money can make a difference. And I wanted to say that in the past couple of weeks, aid workers are doing the best they can. They are working very hard in order to deliver assistance to people in need. So just in the past couple of days, we've seen tens of metric tons of food, medicine arriving in Afghanistan to be deployed immediately to hospitals and to people who need assistance. And aid workers are working in order to make sure that assistance gets to people in need.
And what are you hearing from UN aid workers on the ground at the moment? What is the greatest need that they are assisting with? Is it food supplies? Is it medical supplies?
Well, all these areas are extremely critical, but as the World Food Programme has said, that they're at risk of running out of food in the next couple of weeks. And the World Health Organization has also said that while they are receiving supplies of medicine, much more is needed because of the large amount of people who need humanitarian assistance. Many people have been displaced this year. So just this year, 600,000 people have been displaced. So they need shelter. Like all of us, they just need a safe place to live. And they need their children to be able to go to school. In some cases, it's just even basic things like water and sanitation.
Among these immense needs, Linda, are you worried about aid arriving where it should arrive under this current Taliban regime?
Well, as I just highlighted, you know, it's a very good sign that we're able to continue to get assistance coming in by air, but also by road. So that flow of humanitarian assistance needs to continue. But one of the issues that we were facing is that we were running out of funding. So it was really important that we get renewed fundings and that the pledges come in as quickly as possible so that we can turn those pledges and that money into medicine, into food, and into actual supplies that can help people on the ground right now.
Linda Tom with the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, joining us there from Kabul. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's take a look at some of the latest developments in Afghanistan right now. The Taliban have denied that one of their top leaders, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, was killed in a shootout with rivals. That statement follows rumors about splits within the movement. A U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has defended the Biden administration's withdrawal from Afghanistan. Blinken insisted to the U.S. Congress that officials had prepared for the worst-case scenario. And an international journalists group says the return of the Taliban is a catastrophe for journalism in Afghanistan, which is in danger of disappearing from the country. The German military evacuated more than 5,000 people from Kabul after the city fell to the Taliban. But more than 10,000 people were still on the Foreign Ministry's evacuation list when the airlift ended on August 27th, most of them Afghan citizens. They include journalists, human rights activists, and others who could face Taliban reprisals if they remain in the country. Many are still waiting for Germany to offer them secure ways out. It is a nerve-wracking wait also for their Afghan relatives already in Germany. In Berlin, we met Nargis, a student who was trying to get German politicians not to look the other way.
Nargis carries money fundraised for Afghanistan by her school in Berlin. The 20-year-old Afghan came to Germany with her parents and siblings 5 years ago. They fled the Taliban. But some of her relatives are still stuck in Afghanistan. She worries most for her aunt, a politician who is now in hiding in Kabul.
She doesn't leave the house anymore. She was politically active and stood up for a lot, so she knows if she goes out, it's dangerous. It's a matter of life and death.
Nargis is not even sure if her aunt is officially registered by the German government as a person in need of protection.
I feel very powerless here in Germany, helpless, just completely lost.
In Afghanistan gibt's eine sehr große menschliche Krise.
There is a very big humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, and Germany is just looking the other way. The whole world is.
Nargis thinks she is the only hope left for her relatives in Afghanistan, and she's using every opportunity to raise her voice. She spoke with Olaf Scholz, German finance minister and chancellor candidate for the Social Democrats. But their conversation left her disappointed.
Für seinen Wahlkampf spricht da auf der Bühne über irgendwas.
He talks a lot while he's campaigning, but in reality he isn't doing anything.
Da frage ich mich, wie kann Olaf Scholz da vorne von Sicherheit?
I just wonder how Olaf Scholz can talk about security, family and being together, even though we're living in a completely different world here.
How evacuations from Afghanistan might resume is largely up to the German Foreign Ministry. Nargis has submitted her family's information, but hasn't received an answer yet. She says the wait is unbearable.
Es ist schon ein bisschen schwer, als eine junge Frau.
It is a bit hard as a young woman, a student, a girl, just struggling with everything with the whole world.
Weil ich bin ja auch ein Mädchen und ich will auch so wie
Because
alle
I
anderen
am just a girl, and like all my other friends, my biggest worry should be, what am I going to wear tomorrow? I want that to be my biggest worry, and not having to fight with the world.
der Weltkämpfer.
We can speak now with Theresa Breuer. She's been working with the initiative Kabul Airlift in these past weeks, trying to evacuate Afghans. And she's joining us from Islamabad in Pakistan. Theresa, good to have you with us. So tell us how you do get people out of Afghanistan at the moment.
Our initiative started in the beginning with chartering flights, and we managed to evacuate people from the Hamid Karzai International Airport when it was still functioning, when the foreign troops were still there. At the moment, we're trying to get people across the land borders to Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Pakistan.
And once people get to those bordering countries, what happens then?
Well, so far, it's been quite difficult to get them to these countries. Once they get there, they should be processed by the German Foreign Ministry, the German embassies on the ground, and receive a visa to go to Germany. However, it's been very, very difficult for these people to get to the country. We've managed to bring some people across, But what these people really need at the moment are a verbal note. It's a diplomatic document that tells the neighboring countries of Afghanistan that Germany will take these people to Germany.
So should the German government then essentially be doing more to get Afghans out of the country and also provide them passage to Germany?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there are about 50,000 people that are on the official evacuation list. That includes people in danger and their family members. The German government has so far evacuated about 10% of that number. And a lot of people find themselves in limbo because, I mean, today we got the news that Germany would accept more than 2,000 people from the humanitarian list, but so far these are mere words. There have no actions been following up with these words, meaning that if we from Cabo Luftbrücke, if we sent our people to the Pakistani border right now, they'd have no way of entering because despite having issued words, the German embassy in Islamabad, for example, has not been issuing these diplomatic notes, these verbal notes for people to actually cross the border and be transported to Germany to safety.
And give us an idea. I mean, is it still possible to evacuate people who want to leave, or is this a window of opportunity closing?
No, it's absolutely still possible. The German government would simply need to issue these diplomatic notes, these verbal notes, and then people could cross into neighboring countries, get a permit to stay there for a certain amount of time before moving onward to Germany. This is just not happening quickly enough, despite the assurances that it will happen for certain people. Also, there are talks about the airport reopening. The Pakistani airline has been flying into Kabul airport, so there are definitely options to evacuate the people.
Theresa Breuer, who's been working with the initiative Kabul Airlift, thank you so much for joining us here on DW.